Hello and welcome to today's EDU on Air for K-12. Today we're going to be looking at one of my favorite Google AI tools, and that is Google NotebookLM. And we're going to be looking at this tool through the lens of personalizing learning. So today you will gain a better understanding of what personalized learning actually is. And we're going to look at Google NotebookLM to see how teachers and students can make use of it to personalize learning. And then we'll also look at how you can use NotebookLM with your students within Google Classroom. So to begin with then, let's explore this idea of personalized learning. And to do that, we're going to use a little analogy. Imagine that you are in a school and the school has been delivered t-shirts for all students. And the t-shirts are a one-size-all t-shirt. One size for every single student in the school. And the size just happens to be extra large. Now, while this is going to be great for some students, for others, it's still going to be far too small. And for others, it's going to be way too big and they're going to be tripping all over it, and it really is not going to serve its purpose. One size certainly does not fit all when it comes to clothing, nor does it fit all when we're talking about teaching and learning. And if we were to consider this continuum of teaching and learning, then at one end, we would have that idea of one size fits all. And that's where the teacher teaches all students exactly the same way, with the same resources, the same tasks, and the same assessments, no matter what their individual needs are. Because the opposite is quite difficult. If we go back to our teacher analogy then, knowing that one size does not fit all, imagine the poor teacher who decides instead to amend an extra large t-shirt to suit every single child in their class. So they might take home 30 t-shirts, and with scissors and a sewing machine, they might cut the length of the t-shirt. They might dye the t-shirts different colors to suit the different personalities in the class. They might put on different patches on the individual t-shirts to suit each individual student. So the teacher would end up then with 30-odd t-shirts that are individual and unique, but that suit every single learner in their class. Now, while that's a beautiful idea, it's totally not realistic, is it? In the same way, in a class where you might have 30 different types of needs and preferences for learning, it is absolutely impossible for the teacher to provide bespoke, unique, targeted learning for every single student in their class. Another teacher, going back to the t-shirts, might decide that she's just going to make one of each. She's going to make 3 types. She's going to make a red one, which is small, a yellow one, which is medium, and a blue one, which is large. So 3 types, and she'll do that for the 3 broad groups in her class. If we come back to this continuum of teaching and learning, that really is differentiation. So she's tailoring one thing, in this case, a t-shirt, 3 different ways. She's creating 3 different possibilities to suit the broad range of 3 different groups in her class. So the teacher is tailoring resources to groups of students, which is much easier and less time-consuming, of course, than trying to do something for each individual student. It still does take time, though. Another teacher might decide to get the t-shirts and to provide the materials and to let the students in the class actually create their own, to choose their colors, to mix the dyes to create new colors, to add the different types of patches that they want onto their t-shirts, to give them some voice and choice. In a classroom, this is personalized learning. So this is where students are actually driving their own learning. They've set their goals, they know their learning preferences, the way they like to learn, they know where they are in their learning, what they need to do in order to get where they want to go, and they have some choice about it. So you'll see in the little diagram that there aren't as many colours because there aren't as many choices, but the students have chosen on their own. So that's personalised learning. And often people get a little bit confused between differentiation and personalised learning. Let's just remember that personalised learning is student-driven, whereas differentiation is teacher-led. So with personalised learning, the learners have the agency to choose their pace, the content, and the style in which they would like to learn. So what we're going to look at now is how we might be able to harness Google NotebookLM to personalise learning, to personalise the pace, the speed at which someone learns, the content that a learner covers, and the style in which they like to learn. So I'm going to pop over into NotebookLM, and you might be familiar with NotebookLM. Fantastic tool. You'll see in NotebookLM that I have a variety of notebooks here, and this is almost like having folders on a shelf with lots of content. So I might have a folder that contains all my notes and resources to do with Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. Or I might have another folder that contains all the information that I have about this psychology unit. What we're going to do is go into my space exploration unit. Now, this is a notebook that I have designed for students and for teachers to use. All notebooks, once you go into them, are laid out the same way. You'll see there are 3 panes. This first pane, this first column here, is where I add in my sources. So this is like adding the documents to the folder that sits on your bookshelf. To add sources, you go Add Sources, and this is where you can drop in all those files you have. Teachers love to hoard things, so you probably have lots of documents sitting in your drive, or that you can upload from your computer, or great websites and YouTube videos that you use. So you can just drop in your files here. If you need supplementary information, you can search the web up here for new sources. You can do a fast search, or you can actually conduct a deep research, one of those Gemini deep researches from within NotebookLM, which means you get that wonderful deep research report, but you also get all those great websites that you can choose to import. So once you have all the sources that you want to put in, you'll see that they are listed down here. I only have a few in this particular notebook, but you can actually add tens and tens of them. You'll see I have a YouTube video, I have a website link, I have a Google Doc, Google Slide, I have a PDF, and here I actually have some handwritten notes. Clicking on any of these takes you to a source guide. So this gives you an overview of that particular source, so you can have a look at it. You'll see that I have this click to sync with Google Drive at the top, and that's because this particular source document is a Google Doc. So if I upload the doc in my drive, if I make changes to that doc, I just need to click Sync with Google Drive, and it will automatically update to the most recent version. So here are all my sources, and you can see I can turn them all on, turn them all off, or choose which ones I would like to interact with. You'll also see this new button, which allows me to auto-label all my sources. So what will happen is, as you can see, it has very quickly put them into these little categories. And if I want to change the name of the category, I just need to click rename. And if I want to move one of them to a different category, to a different label, or to add it to 2 labels at once, or 3 or 4, I just need to click the 3 dots and then click Move To. So that's the left pane. The middle pane here gives me at the top a high-level overview of all of my sources. So that in itself is quite a nice summary. Underneath is where I can start asking questions. Now, the difference between NotebookLM and other large language model chatbots is that any question I ask here is solely going to be based on the sources that I have put into my sources pane. So that means there is no risk of hallucination whatsoever. If we have a look, for instance, at this question that I asked earlier, you will see that after every sentence, there's a little number citation. And that, when I hover over it, tells me which source that piece of information came from. It shows me the source, and I can click View Source to be taken to that exact point in the source material, so I can verify that it is indeed accurate. So chatting with this is fantastic because it is grounded in my sources and there is no risk of hallucination. On the right-hand side in this final pane is the studio. And as you can see, this is where I am able to generate a variety of multimodal resources. And we'll have a closer look at that in a few minutes. At the top, you'll see I'm able to share this notebook with people in my domain. And once I have shared, I'm able to look at some analytics based on that. Now, that's a very brief overview of NotebookLM for those of you who aren't familiar with it. But what we want to do, remember, is we want to look at NotebookLM through the lens of personalization. So the first thing we're going to explore is how we can use NotebookLM for learners to be in charge of the pace with which they learn, the speed with which they learn. This chat pane in the middle is fantastic because it allows learners to ask questions based on some or all of the sources and to take the learning at their own pace. There might be something that that particular learner needs consolidation on, needs to be revised, so they can just keep asking and asking until they have made sense of that particular piece of information. Something else which is fantastic, instead of just asking questions, is I can go up to this Customize button at the top of this chat pane, and I can choose Learning Guide. And this is a bit like guided learning in Gemini, because what will happen now is that NotebookLM will help me to learn about this material. And just like with guided learning, it will say to me, what's your main goal? What would you like to work on? And I have a bit of agency to work on the areas that I feel I need further exploration on. So that is Learning Guide. I just changed it in this customization button here. There we go. It's going to help me now with my study plan. And you'll see it's given me some options here, or I can just ask a question and interact with the chatbot that way. Now, once I have finished understanding that information really well, I might like to quiz myself. So over on the right-hand side, I can generate a quiz. Now, people often just click quiz and then they get a good quiz, which is fairly superficial and based on all of the sources. But here are a few tips. I can choose just 1 or 2 particular sources or groups of sources in this case, because it's been grouped now for me with labels, to focus my quiz on. Or I can go in and I can actually say what I would like the quiz to focus on. Maybe I really want it to focus on dark matter and dark energy, for instance. I can specify here how many questions that I would like. And I can say things like, don't let me move on until I'm really confident. Keep asking me questions on that topic until I get them correct. So the student here can revise at their own pace. Let's have a look to see what one of those quizzes looks like. This is one I generated earlier. So you'll see here, if I just expand it, that I have a hint if I need a hint to complete the quiz. And then it's rather like what we see in Gemini. I just complete the quiz, and if it's incorrect, I'm told why it's incorrect. If at any time I'm not 100% sure and I'd like further explanation, I can click the little explain button, and then in the chat, it's going to actually help me to understand that a little bit better. If I still need a little bit more revision, I can choose flashcards. And once again, I can customize the flashcards. I can say exactly what I would like the flashcards to focus on: dark matter, dark energy, space exploration, whatever it might be, and I can choose the level of difficulty. Let's see what the flashcards look like. Here are some space flashcards, and you'll see that they are just like normal flashcards. I once again get that explain button if I am unsure of what they are. And here I can keep tabs on my learning at the pace that I want. So if I'm certain about this, yep, I've got that, I can click on the tick. If I'm not so certain about that, I can click on the cross so that I will get that flashcard up again and again. Audio overviews provide a really great way of interacting with the material. And there are a variety of types of audio overviews. If you just click audio overview, the default is going to be a deep dive. And the beauty about a deep dive is you can actually interact with it. So you'll see here, I have interactive mode next to my play button. And if I click on that, I'll firstly hear the two hosts talking.
If you were to step outside a spacecraft without a suit, you wouldn't just instantly freeze like they show in the movies. That's a total myth.
Oh, completely. Yeah.
Instead, because there is 0 atmospheric pressure out there, the moisture.
Whoa, did someone just break the fourth wall? Let's hear it.
What does atmospheric pressure mean?
That is such a great question to jump in with.
It really is, because it's something we usually take for granted.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second.
Think of the air around us.
So how great is that for learning at my own pace? I'm listening to this overview. I'm not quite sure about something, so I've interrupted the hosts, and I'm getting that immediate clarification. Or if I want to banter with the hosts and talk more about something in depth, then I can do that too. I'm learning at my own pace. I have agency over that. So there are a few ways then of how we can make use of NotebookLM to personalize learning, to personalize the pace at which one learns. Let's have a look now at how we can use NotebookLM to actually personalize content. So there are many ways that we can do that. And probably some of the best ways of personalizing content come from the studio. So when we personalize content, we're augmenting the content or we're adding new content. I could go into reports, for instance, and I could actually, it's going to give me some suggestions for some written reports here. I could create some content which is going to be maybe a bit more difficult for some of my learners, or which might present the information in a slightly different way as a narrative, but based loosely on some of the information from this unit. So I'm able to generate new written content in that way. Let's have a look to see what we have here. I have a nice story, I think, that was created. So, oh no, that's not it. I have a nice story down here that was created, a Minecraft type of story to help to explain gravity. So that's some new content that has been created, based loosely on this scientific principle of gravity, but it is new content. As a teacher, what I can do is I can go into reports and I can ask it to create differentiated assessment. So here, if we go into this assessment suite, what I actually asked was for it to create 3 different types of assessment. So there's assessment 1, assessment option 1, assessment option 2, and assessment option 3. So 3 different types of assessment content based on the information here. Something else which teachers love to do is to ask it to generate information which is at a different reading level. So I can also ask it to generate content that is leveled. Here, my prompt was, what was my prompt? To expand the source material into full-length, comprehensive reading passages tailored for beginner, intermediate, and advanced reading levels. And so you'll see what it's done now, where's it gone, is it created 3 different passages, a beginner passage, and then an intermediate passage, and finally a more advanced level passage. And that is based on the material that I had selected here. So that is generating, for me as a teacher, new content that I'm able then to share with my students or print out for my students to have them read it. It's the same, similar information, but presented in a different way, different content to suit different reading levels. Other things that teachers are able to do to generate new content that can personalize learning is create things like worksheets that suit different learners. So where is it? I have so much here. Here we go. So I could create some little close activities, for instance. Again, it has generated something new for me, but that is based on my content. Other things I can ask it to do in reports are things like generate hands-on tasks. So it doesn't all have to be computer-based. What I did with this one was, if I go to it, was I asked it to create experiments that are based on this particular website here to do with gravity. So I said, act as a STEM person and create some hands-on task that would be suitable for students to help them to understand gravity. Back over here, I can do the same sort of thing in the chat pane. I think up at the top up here, I asked it to create a TikTok style. Here we go. I said, write a TikTok style script. So I chose one of the sources here and I said, rewrite it as a TikTok script. And there it is. There's the nice TikTok script. What I then asked it to do was to turn it into a video overview. And it actually then did that. It turned it into a nice 1-minute video overview here, TikTok style, based on this, based on the constraint over here. I think that's the nice one, actually. Maybe this is it. Really, here we go. This is the TikTok style one. So in 1 minute.
Crazy fact, space exploration went from a fierce Cold War rivalry to prepping permanent moon bases. Let's look at the ultimate rapid-fire evolution of space travel in just 60 seconds. You ready?
Okay, so that was choosing one of my sources, asking it to create a TikTok style script, and then saying, turn this into now a video overview, which it did. So I was really going from one pane to the next to the next. Another thing you can do is use the slide deck, but not just to create slides. So what I did in a document down here is I chose one of the sources which one was it? Space exploration. I chose this particular source, space exploration. And what I said was, create a picture book suitable for young readers based on the Artemis moon mission script. So let's see what that looked like. Beautiful, beautiful little picture book style. So slides aren't limited to just creating slide decks. There's a lot you can do rather than just creating presentations. Now, something else teachers might like to do is to create 3 similar or a couple of similar versions of a NotebookLM, but with slightly different content. So if I had some gifted learners in my class, for instance, I might create a new notebook which has maybe some different information, some harder information, more complex information in it. I might have one that is really simple for those learners who need a little bit more scaffolding. And then I just might have this normal one. But the beauty is I can share these notebooks with my students as chat only. So that means they don't actually see the sources. They don't actually see what's in the studio. If I share with, if I just go to chat, copy link to chat view within my domain, of course, I can share something that looks like this. And you can see here, I don't have the sources and I don't have the studio, but I do have the chat. So I can talk to this like an LLM. It's a nice way of easing students into working with an LLM, but I can't actually access anything outside of my grounded materials. So I know again that there is no risk of hallucination whatsoever. So being able to create slightly different versions on the same topic and then sharing with students in a chat-only way is a nice way, again, of personalizing content for students. So there are a few different ways then that we can personalize content for different learners. Let's have a look now at how we might be able to personalize style. So I showed you a second ago rewriting content in TikTok style. I could do that in other ways too. So I could say, let me see, explain whatever the source is using soccer terms. So you can see here, it has now explained one of these sources that I was really interested in, or all of them, but it was using soccer terms to help me to understand that. And I think that is really terrific. In the customizing and the configuring chat up here, where earlier we went to Learning Guide, we can also choose custom. So this is where I can change the style of the chat to suit my learning needs. If I, for instance, was an English language learner, I could say, always use simple language because I'm an English language learner, use short sentences, and check for my understanding before giving me new information. I also put here, I love soccer, so use those analogies as much as possible. So that means then, every time I chat with this notebook, it will remember that information until I change it again. It will remember to use short sentences. It will remember to use simple sentences because I'm an English language learner. Talking about language, you will have noticed in pretty much all of these that I am able to configure and choose the language that I want the output in. Now, this is really great for language learners. And I know in many of your countries, students are learning in languages that are maybe different from their home language or learning a different language. So being able to choose the language for your audio overview or for your video overview is really fantastic. Students might want to create flashcards in their home language, for instance, or have bilingual flashcards. And all of that is possible just by customizing these. We haven't looked at the mind map yet, but the mind map is a beautiful way of presenting information from your sources in a different style. So if I have a look at this mind map, it really is such a great way for visual learners in particular to make sense of a body of work. So this is based on one document. I could have based it on all of my sources, but I chose just to base it on one document so that it would help me understand it better. So this mind map is to do with threats to human survival in space. And you can see that I have all the different categories here. And when I click on one, it branches out even further. And I can, at any point, click on any of these nodes. And in the chat, it will discuss it a little bit further for me. So again, I have agency over my own learning, and I'm making meaning of this information in a style that suits me, in this visual style, which helps me to see that nice overview in a really organized way. Now, other visual learners will, of course, love the infographic. Really just means picture. And if you haven't looked at this for a while, there are now some really nice visual styles that you can choose from. Beautiful ways of structuring information, presenting information visually, with text overlaid on it in the language of your choice. So you can describe the type of infographic you want, the style, as well as the content that you would like. Some beautiful ways of meeting the needs of different learners then with infographics. So in this particular infographic, it is something that is quite ordered, quite simple, as you can see. I think this was bento box style, nice and structured, rather like something that you would see in a book. Other students, other learners, might prefer something that is a little bit more sketchnotey. So something like this, which is actually a great way also of modeling how to sketchnote, because that in itself is a really great revision method. So that is the sketchnote style. Again, same information, but just presented in a different style. And then the other one I wanted to show you was this particular style. And this is, there we go, a scientific explanation. So once again, for learners who prefer to see things visually, but who also want some detailed explanation, labels, this is a really nice scientific diagram. Again, if we're sticking with visual styles, the video overviews are beautiful. And we had a quick look at one earlier with the TikTok style. The cinematic one is new and is beautiful, and it really presents the information in a gorgeous way. The videos used to be quite like slide decks with narration, but now they've just...
For thousands of years, humans look...
So far more interesting now. They're the video overviews. Again, they can be done in different languages. And in terms of style, let's not forget about the audio overviews, again, in different languages. Sometimes learners might like to hear different perspectives. So that's when the debate is really interesting for students to listen to. Or they might like to hear a critique of even their own work, if they uploaded their own work. So hearing some constructive feedback orally is actually fantastic for some students. Once again, the language can be chosen and you can specify what you would like the hosts to focus on. So there are some ways then that the studio can be used to help to personalize learning. One thing I didn't show you actually, having a look at it now, is using the data table. The data table is terrific in particular for pulling out vocabulary. And we know with language learners, vocabulary is so important. So this was just pulling out some vocabulary from a particular source, but you could do it for the whole lot of sources. And I asked for a definition for the word in a sentence. And in this particular example, I also wanted it in Indonesian because maybe that was the home language of the students. So some great possibilities there. Now, for things like, or all of them pretty much, the mind map, the infographics, the audio and video overviews, you can download these. So it's great if, as a teacher, you want to create some multimodal resources for your students for them to choose from. They don't always have to be on NotebookLM themselves. They can be accessing videos or audio overviews or slide decks or whatever that the teacher has created. So it's just a matter of clicking and downloading for any of them. And then they could be put onto Google Classroom, printed out, shared with your students in some way if they don't have access or they're not on NotebookLM yet. So that's one way that teachers can create some extra resources for their students, for them to use in a different context away from the computer. Different ways that we can use NotebookLM to personalize learning, with the teacher being involved or the student driving the learning completely on their own. And as we're talking about Classroom, I just want to remind you that we can actually add NotebookLM notebooks to Google Classroom. So you'll see here, I have that space exploration notebook that my students can use. There are a couple of ways to do this. You can just click on the Create button and then go directly to NotebookLM, or you can go to Assignment, and once you are in an assignment, you'll see the NotebookLM button. Either way, once you click that, you're presented with two choices. You can create a new NotebookLM that is based on the information that you actually have in your classroom content. So I had a section on Shakespeare, for instance, and I can click all of those sources and create a notebook from scratch based on that. Or I can choose a NotebookLM notebook that I already have, like the space exploration one. All I do is I click it and I click Attach Notebook, and that then is attached for my students. I can choose the topic, give instructions, and so on. And you'll see I have the option to highlight that particular notebook at the top of the class if I want, like you can see here. I have some information about how many students have opened it, and hopefully we'll be able to see more options, more analytics in due course. Now, for the student, when they go in to have a look at this notebook, this is what it looks like. It looks pretty similar, but as you can see, as a student, I am not able to add any sources. I can certainly look at the sources, like this handwritten list. I can look at the sources. I can access things in the studio, but I cannot create any at all. So I can only access what my teacher has already created. My teacher has probably created some nice choice for me so I can decide which elements I would like to look at. So that's when we share it through Google Classroom. This is the student view. This list is fantastic. I just wanted to draw your attention to this actually. So in this source, I took a picture of some notes that I had written. And you know, it's amazing because what will happen is it will actually transcribe that. It'll actually read it. So up here, I said, what were the list words? Because that was what my source was, list words. And there it pulled out my words. So it read my handwriting and pulled them out. Fantastic. If you want to write notes as a student, because perhaps that is more of your preferred style of learning, write notes, upload them into NotebookLM. NotebookLM will make sense of it, pull together bits that are in the same category and make sense of that information to help you to revise. Incredible. Similarly, I could add information from different languages, by the way, and it would also translate that. So not only is NotebookLM multimodal. It's also multilinguistic. How wonderful. So we have looked at quite a few things then so far. We have looked at how we can make use of NotebookLM to personalize learning pace, learning content, and learning style. We've had a look at doing these things, customizing the chat to learning guide, talking with the chat to help to unpack content. We looked at how we can use flashcards and quizzes to learn at one's own pace, how we can customize the audio overviews, how we can use interactive mode to get that immediate clarification. So this is all about personalizing the pace at which we learn. We also looked at how we can use NotebookLM to personalize learning content, whether this is the learner themselves or the teacher who is generating some possible learning content that the students can then choose to use. We looked at how you can generate different reading levels of the same content, how you can show that content visually, how you can extract content into a data table and create things like vocabulary tables or worksheets like that close worksheet, or extension readings or stories, or turn things into picture books, or create things like experiments that are hands-on and away from the screen, or to create assessment tasks. And then we looked at how we can use NotebookLM to personalize learning style, rewriting content in a different style, like in a TikTok script, configuring the chat to make them obsessed with soccer like you are, or to make sure that the style is in a simple style for the English language learner to understand, to change the native language output, to customize all those different wonderful multimodal sources that you can create, like infographics or video overviews or audio overviews. We also looked at NotebookLM and Google Classroom, what the student view looks like, and how you share a chat-only notebook so that the user is only interacting with the chat. So hopefully, in this afternoon's 45 minutes, you have a better understanding now of what personalized learning is, how to use Google NotebookLM to personalize learning, and how you can use NotebookLM within Google Classroom. Think back to what those t-shirts were doing at the beginning and see if you can create an environment where your students, some of the time, have some voice and choice to personalize their own learning using NotebookLM. Thank you so much.